we have a magnificent guest speaker, Reverend David Essel. I want to tell you a little bit about him, because you are in for a treat this morning in our Sunday fellowship, and then a workshop this afternoon at 1 o'clock. And I'm sure everybody's going to want to come back at 1 to participate. But let me tell you a little bit about David. David Essel has been named the new leader of the positive thinking movement by celebrity Jenny McCarthy. He is a #1 best-selling author. He is a counselor. He is a master life coach. He is an international speaker and a radio host, and he has a very special mission. His mission is to positively affect 2 million people or more every day in every area of their life, regardless of their current circumstances. David's work of 38 years has been highly endorsed by the late Dr. Wayne Dyer. For over 25 years, David has used a variety of healing methods to help people release limiting beliefs regarding money, their bodies, love, addictions, a lack of self-identity, and more. His 10th book, Focus, Slay Your Goals, has just been released and has already received a major endorsement from Jenny McCarthy. His most recent book, he challenges the common beliefs that society holds around the concept of affirmations, karma, gratitude, the law of attraction, and more. So he's challenging a lot of beliefs. David is an ordained minister, and he has helped thousands of people who want to deepen their spiritual paths. So let's put our hands together and give a warm welcome for David Essel.
That is one proud mama. Yeah. Woo! I love it. You guys are awesome. And you guys, well, spiritually they get it, right? They don't have to be here physically to get my spiritual energy. Can I get an amen? Amen. That, my parents would say, is my theme song. And they didn't say that as a compliment. I was totally uncontrollable as a child, and some people say I haven't changed a bit, and I'll take that as a compliment. Hey, it's so great to be here. Kelly Waltrip, where are you? I love you, Angel. Don't we? I wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for Kelly. Reverend Eileen, thank you very much. And for all the board members that have accepted me being here too, thank you, because they may not know what they got themselves into, but they're very open-minded. And I like that. We're going to talk about spiritual rejuvenation, but before I get into that, how I am here is such a freaky story. At around 1995, now, has anyone been here in 1995, 96? Was anyone, like a few of us here? Okay, so for the longest period of time, I hosted a nationally syndicated radio show, and for 10 years, it was with Westwood One, 1990 to 2000. And so I got a chance to interview Wayne Dyer over and over and over again, and Deepak and Susie Orman and Mark Victor Hansen, and these guys, they just radically changed my life. They were so amazing. And Deepak and I, and Wayne and I, really hit it off. And around 1995, 96, I can't remember, but Deepak was here, right? Does anyone remember that? Anyway, and so I had a chance to come down the first time in this sanctuary, and I freaking fell in love with it. There's such an amazing energy in here. And I came down to listen at intermission. I had a chance to talk to him about our past interviews on the show. And now to be back, yeah, it feels so good. The world of ministry to me has been really fascinating. I started out as a traveling minister, filling in for people. There was a church in Cape Coral that was without a minister for several months, Center for Spiritual Healing or Spiritual Living. They changed their name. But I was there for 8 months filling in, and then I got a chance to be a pastor of a church, and then I got a chance to go back out traveling like I am right here to churches in St. Louis, and then I even, believe it or not, and this is probably supposed to be a secret, but I know I can trust you guys, right? I did a sermon in a Roman Catholic church in New York. Like, how freaky is that? Right? Like that they could expand and bring in, now I don't know if maybe the card in my pocket was that I was a former altar boy that spoke Latin. Maybe that's what got me in, but I surely wasn't a Roman Catholic priest at the time. And in every step along the way, I have had a chance of spiritual rejuvenation. And the topic of today, though I want to make something really clear, is that spiritual rejuvenation can come from being here in the presence. Of course, the presence is never gone, right? So you can go out into the lake and swim, and the presence is there. And if you go home in your car on the way home, your presence is there. In other words, any moment, at any time, you can claim, call for, welcome in spiritual rejuvenation. Can I get an amen? All right, so now, but here's the really wild part. That's the part we like. But when we talk about spiritual rejuvenation through divorce, addiction, health challenges, job losses, bankruptcy, like in that moment is the same presence. Can I get an amen? Yes. But in that moment is so many times we're distracted. We're not thinking as clearly as we're thinking right here, right now. We're surrounded in community. We're surrounded by love. It's like really awesome, but I don't want it just to be here. This should be the starting point. And then we got to figure out how to take it off. So I like to tell stories. And the one story I'm going to start with is my mom and her spiritual rejuvenation. When we were little kids, my brother, my sister, and I, my mom would go away on retreats 3 times a year. And she'd go away and they'd be in silence, and then they'd be in community speaking, and then they would be back in silence, and it was 3 or 4 days. And she would come back and she would walk in the door, and no kidding, she was different until she saw us. And then immediately she was going, oh. And my father gave her a long leash, but not long enough. She would have liked to stay to that retreat for 300 days a year and just sort of popped in on weekends for us. But that is an option, and there's a spiritual retreat coming up right here. We talked about it a little earlier. Did you write it down? Are you going to go? Can you go? Should you go? Yeah. So let me tell you something else about spiritual rejuvenation is that it has to be something totally different than what you're doing right now in order for you to go to that next level. When we talk about awakening and enlightenment, the way that I like to describe it is that it is simply a ladder. That's all it is. Now, you might have a satori. Wayne used to love to use the word satori, right? You might have this brash, incredible awakening and you never go back and you never slide back, but that's like a miracle. So what I like to think of is that what can you do differently than you're doing right now to welcome in God, to welcome in that spirit, and it has to be something that you're not doing. It can't be just what you're doing because what you're doing has got you what you got. Now, if you're enlightened and awakened and you don't need any more, then don't change a thing. Yes? Like if you know you're at the highest part of the mountain and there's nowhere else to go, stay there. But if there's something else you want, just be ready that you're going to have to do something probably uncomfortable, something you don't want to do, something that's going to stretch you. So you look at that date on the wall that's no longer there, but I think you probably wrote it down, where you have that spiritual retreat and you look at it and you go, oh, it's a Saturday. It's the only day I get to do what I love, cut my grass. How could I give that up, right, to go to a spiritual retreat? And I understand that, I do. But that's where we say on a Saturday, okay, well, you know what? That guy that was here last Sunday said if it feels uncomfortable, do it, and I'm really saying that. This afternoon, we're going to talk about focus in the workshop, and we're going to go through every area of your life of how to get to the next level, and every step will be something out of what you're doing right now. Deeper love, spiritual rejuvenation, better health, whatever it is, and I'll teach you how to go outside of that comfort zone. My mom and dad, my dad is 90, my mom's almost 90, and God, I am so lucky they're here. There's so much gratitude in my heart and soul, And we had to do some really hard stuff recently, and my dad, we had to ask him not to drive anymore. That is brutal. That is brutal. And he's getting through it. He only mentions it every minute and a half, but it's a lot better. Because it was every 30 seconds. So he's elongating. So Okay, so he, we grew up in the Roman Catholic Church, and they were very, very strict Roman Catholic Christians. And when my dad retired, my mom and dad were talking about how to go deeper in their faith. And so they went 7 days a week to Mass, which will do it, okay? If you want to go deeper in your faith, go 7 days a week. Come here on the campus and pray 7 days a week. It doesn't have to be a formal Mass service, right? So my dad hit 72. And when he was a little kid, he wanted to be, now this is spiritual rejuvenation at 72. When he hit 72, he had always wanted to be an altar boy. When he was a child, he couldn't because he had to work, because they had no money. So as a little kid, he had to work, very normal. Back in the days, he couldn't take the altar boy training. At 72, he could. Step out of your comfort zone. Have I said that yet? Okay. So we're going to keep talking about that. You got to get out of that comfort zone. So at 72, he goes to the priest and says, hey, I know I'm a little bit older than the average altar boy, a few years. But I'm wondering, is it possible? And the priest said, heck yes. He said, I'm going to hook you up with Timothy. Timothy is 12. And he's going to take you by the hand, Ed Essel, and he's going to teach you how to be the best altar boy ever. So now you can just imagine them on the altar. Here's steady Eddie Essel here, and 12-year-old Timothy over there, right? And Timothy was literally grabbing, come on, this way. We practiced it. Remember, come on. So one day the priest says, he's up at the altar, and he's about ready to do the reading of the day, and then he got flustered, and he turned, and he said, Ed, come here. And my dad walks up, and he said, I got to have you read this. Now, backstory. My dad was an accountant at Syracuse University for 1 billion years. And 3 times a year, he had to do an accounting report to 3 people in the endowment department, saying where we are, what we're doing, how we are doing, and all this. And he would throw up before he went to speak to 3 people, right? He got so anxious and nervous that for years, he would just throw up and then go speak. Throw up. And so the very first time my dad saw me speak was at Syracuse University, 30, 40 years ago, whatever it was. And after we had a huge audience, and after I got off the stage, he came over to me, he said, you are not part of my lineage. I said, I know, we still don't know who the father is, but we're looking, So my dad, the father says to him, come up and read, and my dad's going, oh, I can just hear him in his head, I did not sign up for this, I did not sign up for this. And he comes up and he said the lectern was shaking, and he's turning the pages, and he gets through it, he goes, oh my gosh. And he goes and sits down, and the priest comes back in. 2 weeks later, it happens again. And my dad going, this is a joke, this is a trick. And my dad goes up, well, he does it 2 more times. Now, my dad was an accountant who had the most amazing spiritual awakening by doing something so uncomfortable to him. Can I get an amen? Right? Like, this is the path of spiritual awakening for most of us. Some of us find it through bliss. And if you're one of those people that you never have any challenges and everything falls into place, great for you, don't change a thing. For the rest of us, like me, we've got to do things that are uncomfortable. And now here's the end result of spiritual awakening for my dad. After this experience of being an altar boy, when he goes to a grocery store, a bank, you cannot shut him up. He will talk to anyone and everyone as long as he can. Like, he's a radically different person. And it came from a spiritual commitment to do something different within his religion, which is your religion is your religion, but it comes from doing something different. So I'm going to challenge you. I want everyone in here today to go to that next level, and on the way out or during our workshop, I want you to write down, don't trust your brain. Don't go, oh, I know what I'm going to do, and then walk out of here, because it ain't going to happen. Can I get an amen? It's not going to happen. You're going to walk out of here, and then there's going to be 10 billion thoughts going through your head, and 17 months from now, you're going to wake up and go, I was going to make this change. Okay, I'll do it now, but if you don't write it down, you won't do it then either. So there's 2 different ways, right? You can go on retreats, you can become an altar boy. or something similar. You can become a volunteer here. You can give more time here, more space, more energy. You can talk to Reverend Eileen and anyone else and Kelly, and you can start to volunteer more. But I'm going to tell you that if you want something different, you got to do something different. That's the motto. In our book Focus, I talk about Lynn, a girl named Lynn, who came in a number of years ago, a long time ago now. And as I was introduced, I work both as a counselor and a life coach and a minister and so many different things. And she came in because her marriage was terrible and she wanted validation to divorce her husband. It happens a lot. And of course, my first game is to say, let's turn it around and see what is our role in the chaos and drama. And then once we do that, they go, oh yeah, okay. And then a lot of times we save marriages, and we saved her marriage. And she did the work, but we saved the marriage. And then she comes back to me and she says, I want to be one with God. That's my new goal. Woo! That's a heavy, Like, I want to experience God as I get in the car, as I get out of the car, when I'm brushing my teeth. She went through the whole thing, and I said, okay, awesome. Bring in your schedule next week, because in our book, we talk about you're going to have to commit 90 straight days, 1 hour a day, 90 straight days, 1 hour a day to massive change. If you want to become one with God, we're going to start here. She comes back in, she shows me her schedule. She's a mom of 2 boys. She's got a husband. She works 2 jobs. And she said, David, I looked everywhere in the schedule. There is not 1 minute of time. I guess I'm going to have to wait till my boys go to college. And I'm looking at the schedule, and I said, wait a minute. Look at this block of time that's untouched. 5 a.m. Look it's vacant. There's nothing there. Thank God we found it. And she looks at me and she goes, no way. I'm up till 11, I'm up till 12, doing the lunches, doing the homework. There's no way. 90 days later, she came in. And you know that look on someone's face when you see that peace, the radiance, when it wasn't there before? For 90 straight days, she got up at 5 a.m., fully committed an hour to her devotion to God, and in 90 days later, it was radically changed. We are still talking about doing something a little uncomfortable. It's doing something that you're not doing right now. To reach that next level, I want you to dig in your heart and soul and figure out what it is to you. Is it getting up earlier? Is it staying up late? I have no idea. But whatever you say, I don't have the time for, that just means you don't want to get uncomfortable. Can I get an amen? For 25 years, I was a raging alcoholic and cocaine addict, doing the work I'm doing right now. Pretty fascinating, isn't it? I'm not alone, by the way. There's lots of people that do the work I do that are raging addicts. Because we're just human beings. That's all we are. And in doing the work, I learned a lot. And then one day I interviewed someone that you guys might have heard of, Maharishi Mahesh Yogi. In 1986-87, I went through the training for transcendental meditation, and it blew my mind. And my Lord, it really radically changed me. In 1996, I had a 1-hour interview with Maharishi. During the radio breaks, Maharishi called me out in the most loving way. You gotta love it when someone calls you out with love, It's a lot more fun than when they call you out without love, okay? But he called me out and he said something to me about my affirmations. And I said, well, one of my most powerful affirmations, Maharishi, that I love to say every day, and I've been saying it for 25 years, is this: I am David Essel, a child of God, happy, healthy, and sober today. And he looked at me and he said, are you? I said, yes. I stretched the truth. Some people call it a lie. It sounds better to just say that I stretched the truth. But here's the thing. And he said, really? I said, yeah. He said, okay, well, think about that. That's all he said. Like, he read into me. He knew it wasn't the truth, right? Several weeks later, I'm speaking at a group in Orlando, Florida, and I get off the stage, and I'll go into the full story this afternoon in much more detail. But one of his assistants, he told to fly from Fairfield, Iowa, where the international or the University of Maharishi is, and come here and talk to me and interview me. And through the interview, she kept saying, what do you remember about Maharishi? And I said that he had incredible joy, but that's the only thing I can remember. And she said, David, the reason you remember he had incredible joy is because you have none. Like, how wrong was she, right? And I argued with her. I said, you don't understand. I live on the beach. I drive this. I'm a host, a minister. I write books. Pfft, I got joy all over me. And she said, okay, well, think about it, because I think you're going to be surprised. 3 weeks later, coming out of a massive binge, I looked in the mirror, and I said, I have no joy. That led me to, now that was a spiritual awakening, okay? Just admitting the truth is a spirit. I'm a food addict. I'm a nicotine addict. I'm a spendaholic. I'm an alcoholic. I'm a drug addict. I'm a I gotta be right addict. There's a lot of them, right? There's all everyone's got something. Well, not in here, Kelly tells me, but in other places I've spoken, they do. But anyway, so I went to a treatment center and listened to what happened so the first level of awakening is that, oh my Lord, you are not living the truth. Like, that's brutal. It doesn't matter if you're a minister, it doesn't matter who you are. It's brutal to look in the mirror and accept the truth, you know, that you have a role in your divorce. Man, that stinks. I went to a treatment center. I go through 3 days of detox. On the way out of detox, I'm going to my room, and this guy comes up to me and says, David Essel. I go, yeah, Father Ron needs to see you immediately. I said, who's Father Ron? Now, if you've ever been in a detox center, when you're coming out, you're not clear-headed anyway, but I had been told about Father Ron, and I forgot. Father Ron was a spiritual director at the treatment center that I was in, and he was a Monsignor in the Catholic Church, which was way up there, and he was a spiritual director here. So I come in the office, and he said to me, I went to sit down. He goes, Essel, don't sit down. I said, wow, that was a nice awakening from a Monsignor of the Roman Catholic Church. I got one question for you. I know everything about your background. I know your path to God. I know your ministership. I know your books, your rated, but I know everything, okay? But I have one question for you. Why are you here? Now, for any of you here that ever struggle with food addiction, alcoholism, whatever, you're going to totally get what I said next, what I say next. Why are you in a treatment center? Now, the average person would probably know the answer to this, but the addict is still trying to hang on. Can I get an amen? And so my first response was to learn how to drink moderately. Isn't that great? Isn't that great? Oh my Lord. It's like, you want to expose an addict, alcoholic, just ask them after they've, struggled for 25 years, right? And they've tried to drink moderately for 25 years, and their first response is, I don't want to give that up yet. And he shook his head, and he was from Brooklyn. He shook his head and looked at the floor, and he just said, oh my God. And he said, I got to give you another chance. Why are you here? I said, to get out of medication to cut my cravings. And he shook his head. He said, okay, one more try, and that's it. Just one more try. I took a big breath. I said, to get sober? Oh, my Lord. He looks at me. Holy cow. Okay, so let me give you something. I'm not going to see you till tomorrow at 2:30, but I'm going to give you this. I want you to think about this one answer for the rest of the night, and then you're going to come back tomorrow. And the answer is this. The answer is, if you get closer and devote your life to God at a level you're not even near, and here I'm thinking that I'm pretty close to God, right? That you're not even near, you will never crave anything again. Now get out of here. I'll see you at 2:30. I go out, I put my stuff in my room. There's a little track on the center. I start walking it. I've got my prayer beads. I'm pulling my prayer beads off, and I'm going through 108, 108, 108, going through my prayers, trying to figure out what's going on. An hour and a half into it, all of a sudden this, now it doesn't come unless you give it space. Can I give an amen? Like, the spiritual rejuvenation doesn't come unless you give it. You got to give it space. In an hour and a half of walking and saying the prayers, all of a sudden, this incredible thought came into my brain. I joyfully surrender my entire life and will to God. I had never done a 12-step program. I had never done anything. And I came in and I said it for the next hour. I joyfully surrender my life and will. And it got stronger, and it got feet, and it got roots. And I'm walking for an hour, wanting this spiritual rejuvenation, wanting this addiction to be lifted, and I come in the next day. 2:30, I'm there on the dot. He goes, come in, sit down. I sat down. He didn't say anything for 30 seconds. He just stared at my face. He said, you got it. I said, Father, I do. Are you willing to do whatever it takes for as long as it takes to keep it? Father, I am. I'm getting chills right now as I tell this story because it has moved me so dramatically. And he said, for the next 30 days, there's one other guy in the treatment center that is going to be joining me. You and I are going to go to spiritual prayer, healing circles without spiritual prayer, circles that have nothing to do with anything other than being present with other human beings. We're going to go to everything you can imagine. You're going to immerse yourself. It's going to be a 12-hour day, work day for the next 30 days. Are you in? From that huge leap to this very day, there has never been a craving for anything. That spiritual rejuvenation. Now, what did it take? It took an investment of time and money and effort. It took getting humble. You know, the very first meeting, the 12-step meeting they had, there was a counselor that came up to me and said, Essel, you're going to be on the bus in 30 minutes. Get ready. We're going to 12-step. I said, I don't do 12-step. He said, why? I said, because they're not good for me. Have you ever been to one? No. Well, then you're going. I said, no, I'm not. So I went and did something, and I went to go back to my room right when the bus was leaving. I thought I'll go and hide in my room, even though there's no locks. I figure if I go hide, just be quiet. Maybe they'll forget about me. I go in my room. There's 5 counselors in the front of my doorway. Like, we haven't seen this before, Essel. And I get there, I go, I'm not going. They go, yeah, you are. We got into this massive yelling match, screaming match. Boy, I just lost my spiritual rejuvenation then. And finally, one of the guys goes, time out, time out. Essel, your best thinking got you into a treatment center. Quit thinking. I don't know why it worked, but it did. And it was one more jump, doing what I didn't want to do. I'm going to ask you on your path to spiritual rejuvenation to keep this in mind. Doing something you don't want to do, something that's challenging. When we think about 40 days and 40 nights in the desert with Jesus Christ, did he stay at a Holiday Inn? Nope. Was he tempted beyond control? Did he come out the other side even deeper, stronger in love with God? Yes. Can I get an amen? Right? The challenge. Like, unbelievable. Now, some of you will reach it through bliss and nirvana and daily meditation. Some of you will. But what I've found in 38 years of doing this work is that most of us reach it by going. Wayne Dyer used to tell me the sacred hour that he found every day was 4 a.m. And he would look at me and I'd say, I am so sorry I'm not there, brother. And he would look at me and go, David, I'm not kidding you. If you devote the sacred hour, I go, I am not there, my brother. I love you to death. But that would be so super uncomfortable for me that I could never. Is that your path? Are you ready to devote that amount of time? Spiritual rejuvenation is available for anyone and everyone, regardless of your age, your financial condition, your addictions, your health situation, you're in a relationship, out of a relationship, you're hating men, hating women. None of that stuff matters. Isn't that kind of nice to know? Like, you don't have to be in a good place to get spiritually rejuvenated. Can I get an amen? I love this part of it. And then the only bad news is there's no excuses. You can't say, well, Kelly was talking about a house closing. Well, as soon as the house closes, okay, I'll devote myself back to this path. As soon as this happens, we go, no. Let's go now. Which is another reason we're doing the workshop today. I would like to take this energy, this passion in this room, and bring everyone up to the next level with specific steps to take in writing to help you go past where you are right now. My final story, unconditional love as an opportunity for spiritual awakening. So, and we'll discuss this afternoon. I think there's a lot of misunderstanding about unconditional love between adults, between two people in a relationship. I think it's talked about like, let's go grab a Starbucks. I'm unconditionally loving my partner. Let's go grab a... I mean, it's interchangeable. Like, we use those words, and they may not be true. As a matter of fact, as I'll explain this afternoon, and this isn't a negative thing, because this is like the truth that we can build on to reach towards unconditional love. But unconditional love, as we talk about in the book, and I'll go over this afternoon, is more common between a dog and its owner. Can I get an amen? Or a parent and a child. Yes? Than it is between two adults. But we can get there. If you want, if you're willing to drop your righteousness, that desire to not give in. But there's also another form of unconditional love. And it brought me, to this very day, it brought me higher than anything else I've shared so far. And it happened to begin with a 10-year-old little girl. 3 years ago, one of my best friends, Denise Link, lives way out west, was telling me about her niece, 10 years of age, hot as heck in the summer, and she's going house to house collecting books for the homeless. Now, that's pretty rare for a 10-year-old. And no one told her to do it. She wasn't said, like, it wasn't a school project. She just woke up one day and said, I feel so bad with all these homeless people that don't have books. So she convinced her younger sister to join her, and they went house to house, and their goal was to collect 100 books for the homeless. And I just said, this little girl is so special. I want her on my radio show. So Denise got her mom to say yes, and I have little Zoe and her sister on my radio show, and I interviewed, and Zoe answered me like she was 50 years old. Well, David, it's just the right thing to do. Oh, yeah, that's right, How many other 10-year-olds? Well, it's just the right thing to do. And yeah, it's a little uncomfortable knocking on doors and begging in the heat, but yeah, it's just the right thing to do, Like, I have a lot of books, and I want everyone else to have a lot of books. It was just so precious. So we get off the air, the interview. I'm dying the whole time. I'm having so much fun. And I said to Denise a day later, I said, tell me more about this angel. This little girl's already got my heart, but tell me more. And I was to find out that she had never met her dad. She may never meet her dad. She's had 1 or 2 letters over the 10 years. And she was 10 years, this was 3 years ago, she had no communication. And I know from my work in counseling and ministry that the most important thing for a little girl is to have a male role model telling her that she's beautiful and kind and compassionate and smart and everything she needs, and that she's acceptable the way she is, and let's work on this beautiful thing called service. And there's this, and it's the same thing with little boys. This is a pathway to spiritual rejuvenation. Whether you've never had kids or your kids are gone, this is unbelievable. So I find out this, and I said, do you think I can start texting back and forth with Zoe? We'll go through you. We'll go through, so I'll text you. And it grew, and it's grown into this most outrageous love relationship. And she was in this big play at 13, just a few months ago. She wants to be an actress, and in her city is this theater that has birthed so many actors and actresses, extremely famous ones, and she got a chance to be on stage. And when I found out she was going to be there, I said to Denise, I am there. But don't tell her. Don't tell her I'm coming. So she calls me her Florida dad. She'll say, David, my Florida dad, I love you. So she said, do you think that my Florida dad could come to the play? And Denise had to say, you know what, honey, he works really a lot. I don't really know if that's possible. So she asked and asked and asked, and then she stopped. And I said to Denise, this is what I want you to do. Tell her that you're going to the airport to pick up a package, which was not an absolute lie. Okay, I just want to be clear in the position that I'm standing here speaking for you. I'm not a huge proponent of lying. And so, but we did stretch, right? We just took that, I am a package. You could consider myself a package. I just wasn't wrapped and taped. And so Zoe is going out to the airport with her, and she's going, why are we going to the airport on a Saturday night? Like, this doesn't make sense. Why can't your boss pick up the package himself? You know, a 13-year-old, right? 13-year-old. So I get to the airport, and I see them walking ahead of me. And I couldn't believe it. And I go down the escalator, and I come up behind them, and I said, excuse me, ladies, is this Phoenix, Arizona? And Denise turns around with this big smile, and Zoe turns around. And I said, come here, honey. And she screamed and ran to me. And I held her, and Denise took 1.7 million photos. And I cried. I cry almost every day with her, texting, FaceTime. She has filled a void, which is one of the greatest purposes of spiritual rejuvenation, that we don't even know is there. That's why it's worth doing the work. We don't many times even know what we're missing until we put the effort and time in. Can I get an amen? And then we say, why didn't I do this earlier? Why didn't I devote more time to unity, to be a part of the community? Why didn't I go more frequently? Why didn't I get up earlier in the morning? Why haven't I? Like big brothers, big sisters, you don't have to know. There are so many children that are ready to open your heart. My heart has been radically blown open by now a 13-year-old little girl who shares with me her struggles at school and with friends, and we talk as equals. Now, I think I'm getting the bigger deal out of it, quite frankly. I really do. She's getting what she needs, and I'm getting something I didn't even know I needed. It starts today. And the greatest news in the world for your spiritual rejuvenation is that you're 100% in control. It's just a matter of making the decision to write down what you're going to do, how you're going to do it, when you're going to start, and I would advise no later than 1 o'clock today. May you have a beautiful rest of your day and week. Thank you. Thank you very much.